Troy comedian incarcerated, examine Reddit. Today was a crazy day for Siege, both in and out of the server, and also for my computer. My audio settings got all messed up and I had to reset them, and so if I sound different at all, that might be why. But I mean, addressing the Siege controversy, I don't want to talk about it too much, but basically Ubisoft said that instead of the teams from Mexico VPNing onto the LAN build, that they were just going to play online on, I don't know, Central or South Central, whatever server, and then they reverted the decision. So some people were happy, a lot of people were happy that they did revert the decision, but also were very unhappy that they had to revert the decision at all. And some things seemed really obvious to a lot of people, and there were a lot of allegations toward Ubisoft and towards teams and orgs and all this stuff. I don't really want to go into it. And mostly it was involving W7M and then all of their alleged adversaries, but okay, not really something we need to discuss, just something to be aware of. I guess if you want to view sort of the brunt of what was going on, the W7M versus Dark Zero match has the most in-server stuff regarding it, and then I guess, I mean, just pull up on Twitter if you want to see the fallout and all of the tweets and whatever. But okay, not really what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about the actual matches and the groups from Charlotte Major, day number 2, and so day number 2 of the group stage. So we'll start in Group A here, the smallest group, with Elevate not being present, and it is one of the only groups that actually has a team locked into a position. So Oxygen is locked into the playoffs and also locked into being a first seed for the playoffs. So Team 1 has just one more game to play, Direwolves have 2 more to play, so each of them could get up to 6 points. Get onto 6 points, and so they can't catch up to Oxygen on 9, so that locks Oxygen in the first place position for the group, even though there are still games to be played. So I guess Team 1 and Direwolves are basically just fighting for that second position. Team 1 obviously has a pretty big advantage right now in that they have 3 more points than Direwolves, but they've already played 1 more game. So if Direwolves can somehow beat Oxygen, get the full 3 points, that would put them each on 3 points, and then it just comes down to the winner of Team 1 versus Direwolves, and it seems pretty unlikely. So these are the actual games from today. These are the ones from yesterday. Direwolves lost 2-7 to Oxygen, and Oxygen also beat Team 1 7-5. So an even closer result than Oxygen had against Team 1 yesterday, but still taking the win in regulation. They're the only team in the tournament to have not dropped a point thus far, and one of only 2 teams to have not dropped a single game, and that other team is Astralis, and they're the other team that is actually locked into the playoffs thus far. So, right, if Direwolves can somehow manage to beat Oxygen, as unlikely as it seems, then it just comes down to Team 1 versus Direwolves, but actually Team 1 versus Direwolves is the first game, so if Team 1 just beat Direwolves, this last game won't matter at all. And it's entirely possible maybe Direwolves can beat Oxygen if Oxygen are really pulling their punches. They do have every reason to do so now. They can't fall out of the first place position, so no reason to show anything. They're just about to go play in the playoffs, so but maybe they don't even really need to show anything to beat Direwolves, considering how big of a beatdown they handed them today. And all right, so that does it. Just these 2 teams sort of fighting for second place, but it's more than likely going to be Team 1. Okay, moving on to Group B. Team Liquid, Furia, Xset, and Cyclops. Coming into the day, all 4 of these teams were on 3 points, but at the end of the day, Team Liquid has taken the lead, and Cyclops is, I guess, in last place. Furia and Xset in the middle here. Probably it's going to be one of these 2 teams joining Team Liquid in making the playoffs, but it's still possible for anyone to make it. Cyclops can still make it, even if it's much more difficult for them than either Xset or Furia, and I guess it's also possible Team Liquid don't make it. There is also a scenario where all of these teams end on 9 points. So Furia and Xset, both of them play Liquid, and both of them play Cyclops. So we won't see any more Liquid versus Cyclops, and we won't see any more Furia versus Xset. So even though Furia and Xset are in sort of the most direct competition for that second spot, they are only able to get points against the other 2 teams. So it just really comes down to how they stack up, and that might sort of disadvantage Xset because the only points that they've gotten so far are against Furia, so they have to probably beat at least one of the 2 teams, if not both of the teams that they've already lost to. So looking a little bit dangerous for them. They also have a slightly worse round differential, but okay, right. If they all do tie on 9 points, so if Cyclops beats Xset and Furia both in regulation, that puts them on 9 points. If Xset and Furia both then beat Liquid in regulation, then everybody's on 9. It just comes down to round differential, and then it's anybody's game. Obviously, Cyclops is in the worst position in that regard now, but in this hypothetical scenario, they do take 2 wins, I suppose. And and Liquid goes 0-2, and Furia and XSET both go 1-1. So maybe they can make up that differential. But that's kind of a crazy scenario. If Cyclops does want to make it, probably they're fighting for the second place position. What they need to do is beat XSET and Furia, and they want Liquid to also beat XSET and Furia. It doesn't have to happen exactly that way, but that's just the best case scenario. And so looking at the games that went down, Liquid took down XSET once again, or not once again. They will play one more time, but it ended up being a Liquid win, even though it looked like by all accounts it should have been an XSET win. They were up 3-0 or 4-0. Kino was going absolutely nuke, but then Liquid ended up salvaging the half, going 2-4, and then once they got onto defense, I think it was on Villa, right? Yeah, once they got onto defense, they got a 5-1 half. Spirits went like 1-12, one of the lowest recorded ratings of all time at like 0.02. Brutal game for him. And yeah, just Liquid has been shakier than a lot of people expected. They are 3-1, but even their wins seemed closer than a lot of people thought they should have been. But Liquid did also take down KAG, slightly less close than in the previous day, but still a pretty decisive beatdown. XSET took down Furia once again, more decisively than they did last time, and Furia took down KAG 7-3. So not been very good for APAC. Direwolves don't have a single point on the board, neither do Chiefs, and KAG only has the one game, so 3 points on the board. And so maybe things would have gone better for APAC had Elevate been here, but yeah, it's going absolutely atrociously. Seems pretty unlikely any of the APAC teams will be making it out of any of their groups, with well, one of them actually already being eliminated. We'll talk about that more when we get there. And I think that pretty well does it for this group. Yeah, again, probably Liquid makes it out, and probably Furia or XSET will join them in second place, but there are still a lot more things that could potentially happen. So let's take a look at Group C. Dark Zero, G2, W7M, and Heroic. I think this group has developed a little bit surprisingly given where it was yesterday, and I guess even more so compared to expectations before the major started. So I think most people had W7M and Heroic being the two making it out, and here they are probably not going to make it out. Maybe one of them can, and well, certainly one of them can, but I don't think both of them can, especially considering Dark Zero and G2 still need to play each other in the last day, so there's still 3 points guaranteed for one of these two teams, or at least split between the two teams. And okay, so yeah, I think G2's been exceeding expectations, and Dark Zero had an extremely good day on, well, 2 day. Okay, so let's look at the actual games. Dark Zero took down Heroic, and they also took down W7M, both in regulation, getting them the full 6 points. Coming into the day, it was what, G2 on 4, Dark Zero and Heroic both on 3, and W7M on 2. So Dark Zero got all their points, Heroic got no points, and then W7M got a few, and G2 got a decent number as well. And so, right, yeah, that Dark Zero W7M game is the one I was talking about before. G2 took down Heroic 7-3, just like they did in the first day. And then, a little bit surprisingly, W7M takes down G2. Given that W7M was only on like 2 points, G2 had just dismantled Heroic, it seemed like probably G2 should have beaten W7M, but no, they kind of keep themselves alive. So, you know, say G2 beats Dark Zero in overtime, that puts them each onto 10 points, then W7M still could go on to 10 points, and there's like a whole round differential tiebreaker scenario, but realistically it is probably just W7M and Heroic each trying to snag a spot from Dark Zero or G2, and more than likely whoever wins out of Dark Zero and G2 in their head-to-head matchup will just go on to make it to the playoffs and probably just get first place in the group. We'll have to see. There is still 6 points on the table for everybody, so not necessarily, you know, again, if they could be tied on points after that, and then it comes down to their other matchups a lot, and then maybe Dark Zero wins in overtime as well, putting them onto 11, then these guys go on to 9, and then still it's possible, even though Dark Zero beat G2, that G2 will end up above them. Yeah, just a ton of things that can still happen, but you know, one more time, it's not looking too good for W7M and Heroic, given that you know, a whole 4 points between the second and third place teams there. And so yeah, been one of the more surprising groups, I'd say, and I think a lot of people were saying at the beginning that it did seem like one of the harder ones to call. So let's take a look at the final group. In Group D, we have Astralis, BDS, Wolves, and Chiefs, and also we have 2 teams secured into certain positions. So I guess Astralis isn't locked into first place, but they are guaranteed to make the playoffs, and Chiefs I don't think are locked into last place either, but they are locked out of top 2, thus locked out of making the playoffs. So Astralis and Oxygen will be going to the playoffs. Chiefs will not be going to the playoffs. And then tomorrow we will determine whether each of the other 12 teams will be making it to the playoffs or not. It's exceedingly likely that BDS will be making it and Wolves will not be making it. It's a whole 5 points between them, so Wolves need to do extremely well and BDS need to do extremely poorly for Wolves to take BDS's spot. BDS could end up in first place as well, especially considering that BDS and Astralis still need to play each other again. But, obviously Astralis has not yet lost a game. They did lose a point to, I think it was to Wolves, right? But not dropped a game. They've been really, really good. And BDS, they are also on 3-1, but maybe not doing as well as some people had anticipated in order for BDS to make a very deep run. But I guess everybody has, for the most part, been proven mortal thus far, I guess, except for Oxygen and Astralis. They're sort of the teams to beat at the moment. But before anybody actually gets a shot at them in bracket, we're going to have to see how these groups pan out. So looking at the games, BDS took it over Wolves, but it was a 7-5, so nearly going overtime, and at that point could have been a Wolves victory. Astralis beating Wolves, and this, just like the other game, the Wolves got off to a decent start. At one point I think they were like 3-1, but then after that point they only got one more round and Astralis got 6 rounds. And I think that was right after a tactical timeout, and they sorted their stuff out. And so even much more decisive than the previous game where Wolves went all the way to round 15, and they had a pretty good lead in this one. I think this one's like 4-1, but still Astralis bested them in each of these showings. And then Chiefs, they keep getting pretty close. 4 rounds, 5 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds. They're almost taking these teams to overtime, but just barely not. And I think, this is when they lost out. They had a chance to keep their playoff dreams alive up until they lost that last round to Astralis, because I guess, if they went to overtime, then maybe they could have won the game. They could add at least 2 points on the board, and then, no, I guess it's still not even enough, right? They would have needed the full 3 points. So as soon as Astralis went on to 6, it seemed like their dreams died. And so now, I mean, they could still play spoiler, I guess, a little bit particularly to Wolves, but I guess I was going to say BDS, but they don't play BDS again. So basically they can just play complete spoiler to Wolves. And that is in the very last one. So it could come down to Wolves having to beat Chiefs to make it. If Wolves beat BDS and Astralis beat BDS, probably both in regulation, then if, maybe if Chiefs beat Wolves, then that could be a heartbreaker for them. And so I guess that's going to do it. I considered showing stats and stuff in these, but I'll probably just do it maybe in like the off day. I'll just go over like the player stats, because I think people like when these videos are kind of nice and short. Don't actually know how long this one is at the moment. Hopefully it's 10-ish minutes, but I feel like it's a little bit longer than that. So, all right, a like and a sub would be appreciated. A comment if you have anything to say. And with all of that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.